Hello and welcome to episode 98 of Overdose and Chill. I'm Paul Pritchard, I'm the CEO of Overdose, and I am super pumped to be having this conversation with Nathan Bush from eSuite. I'm not going to steal your thunder too much, Nathan, but it's worthwhile just mentioning some of the killer things that you're doing at the moment. Nathan's the director of eSuite. He is the host of the Add to Cart podcast, world famous, I believe now. And he's also the facilitator of digital social as well. I'm so interested to understand how you fit all this into your life, Nathan. Welcome, mate.
Thanks, Paul. So good to be here with you. Bit nervous, actually, being a live podcast. We don't normally do that. We usually have a great editor who can take my bad bits out.
Yeah, I know we talked about this a little bit briefly, right? That unfiltered nature of this conversation. So hopefully we can keep it on track and not get it, too carried away. But why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you've come from and what got you to here, and then we'll dig into kind of some of the why.
Yeah, great. I'll give you the 1 minute version. We can dig into the parts that are interesting. So my background is retail and e-commerce. It's really passionate about everything e-commerce. Started out in agency side back in early 2000s. Rode the wave of social media when Facebook was a new thing, and we could setting up Facebook pages was a big thing for clients, all the way through to developing e-commerce sites in agencies. Moving then into my first retailer role at Super Retail Group, where I headed up digital and e-commerce for brands like BCF, Supercheap Auto, and Rebel for 6 years. Got to the end of my time there, and then did some freelancing work, helping businesses grow their e-commerce. So businesses like Michael Hill and Stone and Wood. And then saw a big gap in the market in 2019, where we had a lot of great agencies like Overdose who are helping retailers with technology and marketing, but saw the gap that we had a lot of retailers with great partners and great tech, but not a great team. And we all know that to hit the growth that we want, we all need a great team. So that's where eSuite came about. And it's recruitment, training, and consulting, all based around people in e-commerce. And
That's
then
amazing.
I've got the Cart podcast on top of that. So I
and
tell you why that came about. But eSuite's the main gig. People often go exactly like you did, Paul. You do so much. Like, what do you actually do? So eSuite's the main gig, and there's a few other things around it.
Yeah, and like such an incredible journey, right? And the things that got you to here and motivated you to do all the things you're doing now, eSuite and the podcast and the events, the get-togethers, the gatherings, all that sort of stuff. Why don't we just talk about what triggered that moment in 2019 to kickstart eSuite, right? Because you'd come through the agency world, you'd been a creative strategist, you'd done the kind of brand and insights piece, you'd been at the forefront of working on social platforms, on Facebook and the like, and then you moved into this retail environment with SRG as well, and some killer brands too, right? Like if you're going to cut your teeth in digital commerce, right? That's a good place to start. But what, through that journey, what triggered that moment to go, what, I need to do something for the industry. I need to be able to help, foster, grow, find talent and bring it to the retail industry.
Yeah, I guess it wasn't that well planned, if I'm honest. It kind of fell into it. But I fell in love with retail, and I never set out to be industry specific. I love digital, I love social, I love all those kind of things. And then at Super Retail Group, I fell in love with retail and e-commerce and went, oh, there's a community here. And Paul, we were talking about our experiences at Online Retailer, which was last week, and being at those conferences, you quickly work out that this isn't just websites or selling product. There is such a beautiful, great community around e-commerce in Australia and New Zealand that it's just fun to be a part of. So I never saw that, whether it was the events or the connections, that was doing any great service. I just enjoyed it, if I'm honest. And I found out that I'm pretty good at connecting people. And I could use that at eSuite to, how do I help connect people? So over my journey from Super Retail Group, I always had the mantra of sharing what I could, in terms of, what can we present? Obviously, being a public company wasn't always easy to share exactly what we were doing, but where I could, share that and help grow the industry as a whole. People like Paul Greenberg, I think, are a great example of just trying to grow the whole pie. And that's where I see the opportunity. So when it came to eSuite, it kind of was natural that I'd been doing these events. I've been connecting people, writing a bit of content, even doing recruitment, even though I didn't know I was doing recruitment, with people reaching out and going, hey, looking for this person, can you connect me? And I'd always do it. It was just a bit of fun. And then I was like, we could actually make a proper process out of this to amplify the impact. And luckily enough, Emily, who's my co-founder at eSuite, she actually knows recruitment. So I didn't know recruitment, but she's got great experience in recruitment and has helped set this up so that we're able to help some really great retailers and some great people get their jobs.
It's so interesting you talk about people and that aspect of it more than, placements and, and finding roles and all of those technical things that come from that talent industry as well. And then you mentioned, people like Paul Greenberg giving back to the community, giving back to the industry and trying to shape a better world for it as well. One of the things I'm really interested about is how eSuite really quickly evolved from just trying to find great talent into how do you foster that talent or grow it as well. So that training aspect, and then what that shapes, towards in terms of that consulting piece as well. So you want to talk a little bit about that training piece particularly? What was the gap that you saw?
Yeah, absolutely. So eSuite started with recruitment, and that was the natural place to start because we knew the business model. We knew how we could make that work and we can grow the team. But we knew from day one that if all we did was recruitment in e-commerce, and that's all we want to do. We only want to do e-commerce. We don't want to go broader than that. If all we did was that, then the e-commerce industry would get pretty pissed off with us pretty quickly, right? Because it's a small industry. So you'd end up just moving the same people around the same seats, and that wouldn't last long and no one would be happy. So we knew we had a role to play to grow the talent pool, not just move the talent pool around. And that's where we've come up with our training program. It's called the eSuite eCommerce Accelerator, a 10-week course to help the foundations across everything from marketing to tech to supply chain to analytics and beyond. And that originally came, the idea originally came from trying to get university students their first job, because unis do a great job at teaching broad business concepts, but there's no course or even module around e-commerce specifically. And we know it's growing.
It's crazy.
I know. And we know it's a growing market. And Paul, you'd see it in your team that most people learn e-commerce just by doing, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So we wanted to go, well, how can we accelerate this? How can we streamline people into a job? Because at the same time, we had a lot of retailers that we're working with going, hey, we're ready for grads. We're ready for entry-level talent, but I don't have time to sit over their shoulders and teach them everything. So I kind of want them to come in and be able to do things straight away. And whether that's simple things like, update a product page or pull reports out of Google Analytics, that adds value straight away. And then they can learn from there. So that's where we came up with the idea of the accelerator to help teach university students. We launched that in terms of we take uni students through for free and then place them into these organizations that want that entry-level talent. But what we actually had was a lot of retailers come to us and go, hey, can we actually put our team into the accelerator, but you promised not to poach them? And I was like, actually, that's a better idea, right? If we can help retailers grow an internal talent pool of e-commerce talent, whether that be in-store talent that is often studying at university and, give them a pathway into the organization, or even coming sideways, project managers, merchies, all these kind of people who have been in retail for a long time and now starting to butt into e-commerce teams. If we can upskill them in e-commerce, it makes the whole organization stronger. So that's our focus. We still take 20 university graduates through for free in order to help place them and grow the pool. But yeah, it's really about just growing that pool, whether that be internally within your business or wider in the industry.
That's incredible. Before we dive into a lot more of that kind of personal motivation and what we're seeing in terms of the talent landscape in the industry, particularly in the APAC region as well. I just want to let everyone know who's watching. If you have any questions, no matter where you're watching, we're live on LinkedIn and YouTube and Twitter and Facebook. Drop questions in, and we'll attempt to answer them as we talk through as well. So Nathan, now we know the kind of what aspect of it, like what eSuite's doing. What I'm really interested in looking forward, and this is really impacting our business and the merchants that we work with as well, is there's such a talent change going on in the market at the moment, right? You talk about bringing new people in, and then all of a sudden retailers going, actually, I could do that for my own people. What do you feel about the talent landscape at the moment, right? We're seeing a massive shortage of talent for roles, but equally we're seeing the cream rise to the top a lot faster as well. So what do you think building eSuite and driving the solutions that you've built within that, what's motivated you to do that? And with that in mind, what do you think we're going to see in the next sort of 6 months, right? Let's keep it short term focused.
Yeah. It is really interesting. Like even the time between when we had our briefing chat on this call, we do a briefing chat. We won't let everyone know, but and that was 3 weeks ago. The market's changed again so much since then. So we've had to adapt and change as it is. But overall, the market is absolutely still a candidates market. Candidates still hold a lot of power, and a lot of retailers are actually struggling to keep up because obviously we've had huge inflationary pressures, which extend into wages. And I think that's been amplified in e-commerce based on the growth that we're seeing and the talent shortages. So to put it into perspective, we've had this huge growth in e-commerce. So we've got a lot of businesses who are now jumping in and going, actually, I need to invest in my team and grow my team. We've had borders shut in Australia, meaning that the external talent hasn't been able to come in for a long time. And we've got businesses who are unsure on how do you predict what growth's going to happen next year? It's a really hard planning environment. It's really difficult time to be a retailer. So when you've got people and talent saying, hey, I think I'm worth this much, and this is my time to put that stake in the ground. I need to go get it while it's out there. It's a hard market to navigate. And even for us, we wrote a salary guide initially, and that would have been 12 months ago now. And I've stopped sending it out. I'm like, I can't even use that anymore because it's unpredictable based on the organization and who's out there in the market. For the next 6 months, I would say we've definitely seen a shift, and it's only an initial shift. I think it's going to get stronger from candidates being really confident and, negotiating hard, which is absolutely the right thing to do if you've got the talent. And the opportunity, absolutely do that. But there's been a layer of conservatism, I think, and security needed. So we've seen, interest rates rising, and we know that there's probably tougher times to come. The question of security and stability is starting to become much, much more important, whereas before it was chasing the dollars and the growth. That's definitely what we've seen in the last few weeks.
Yeah, look, I think we've seen exactly the same thing, right? That supply and demand model has just shifted significantly towards the talent pool, right? And they've been in a hot seat. I guess if I look back on my career, there was this old adage for probably 15 years, the best way to get a pay rise was to move jobs, right? Because you could negotiate hard and you were in demand. Are we seeing now that shift where it's been easy to get that kind of next big uptick and that next big role and responsibility? Do you think that what we'll now start to see is, a lot of those promises, that hype that's been in the market now have to come into fruition and actually start to produce that return as well?
Absolutely. I was speaking to a retailer, an online retailer, who was just dismayed because one of their junior designers had been poached by another organization, and now she's a creative director. And he was like, it hurts me, but I'm really worried about her because, she's got the role and she's brilliant, but she's not at a creative director level yet, but she's taken it because the opportunity's there. There's going to be a whole lot of pressure and everything that comes from that as well. So I think we're going to see things even out and people fall into the right areas. But at the same time, there is I feel like we've stopped the mad scramble, if that makes sense. There was probably during that peak COVID time, we saw the mad scramble. We've seen a lot of consolidation, even from especially founder-led businesses around that $20 million to $50 million mark. They were growing phenomenally during COVID, right? Like absolute off the charts growth for that level of D2C business. And we had a lot of founders that were coming to us and saying, all right, this is my time to get out. Like, because I can. This is the window. This is the door I've been waiting for. So help me fill my team with that middle level management so that I can step out. Seeing a lot of those founders come back into the business and be more hands-on now that they have to be. So things are still in flux. All power to you if you've gone out and made the most of it. But I've also seen a lot of retail stories. Like Incu is a great example. Doug at Incu is a fantastic retail example of sticking solid to an organization for a long time. And he started in stores and he's now the CEO of Incu, leading a brilliant team. So there's multiple ways to go about it. Jumping jobs is definitely one way to get ahead, but it's not the only way.
Yeah, I mean, I think that specific example really talks to the responsibility businesses have. So, in this hot market where you're paying above what you're used to paying for talent and you're stepping them into really senior roles, I guess, equally that person who's stepping into that role needs to realize what their expectations are and what they've got to live up to. But I think as a business, when you're so hungry for talent, you're paying over and above what you're comfortable with, you also have a responsibility to create an environment where that person can be successful, right? No one wins when someone oversteps their experience and their expertise to take on something, and the business doesn't allow them to understand that that's just, they're starting at a point, they've got a lot to learn, but the business will invest in that journey for that learning as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
And that investment comes in multiple ways, right? It's not just throwing money at a training course, which probably doesn't,
absolutely.
been the worst salesman ever here, but it's not just throwing money at a training course. It's, hey, stretching them with new projects and allowing them to make mistakes. And you've got to go, actually, yeah, well, I took this person on as a development, so I've got to expect mistakes to happen. And being tolerant and working with that person on those, which isn't always easy in the heat of like a peak retail season, right?
Oh yeah, and that's the interesting thing, that cadence hasn't changed in terms of in terms of retail, right? You still need to kind of lead into that October, November, December period. That's going to be your big key selling period. You've got a lot of foundational work and seasonal work that you're doing as if you're in fashion or if you're in seasonal product, that cadence doesn't change, but the type of people that you have to bring into your business to succeed in this new, more digitally focused world does have to change. And you're right, that investment isn't just dollars and cents, it's time.
Yeah.
It's the ability to innovate the way that you support those people through training, through new supportive environments, flexible working, all of that sort of stuff, right? We've just seen probably the biggest transition to the workforce globally that we've seen in 20 years probably, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny that we've talked a lot about salary, and what we're finding in difference in talent is that if you've been around for a little bit and you've gone through multiple organizations, we tend to finding that yes, you want to be valued and you want to get the salary that you deserve, but you start understanding what a good workplace looks like, and you start valuing it. Whereas if you're first job, second job, third job, you're like, nah, it's all right. I'll take the money and then I'll put up with the conditions. And I don't think that's valued as much, which is really frustrating for retailers and organizations running really culture-led businesses. You're like, why don't these, our junior teams understand how good they've got it? And you've kind of almost got to experience bad to value good culture. We're seeing a bit of that.
Are you seeing that shift, right? Because you talked about grads or new to the industry and helping them get that first step up through the accelerator program. Are you then seeing the businesses providing that additional support? Are we wrong in expecting that by bringing a whole new talent pool into the market, that as a business that's been around trading for a long period of time, or an agency like ours, that we also have to adapt to that next layer of people coming through who could be future leaders, and how we start to guide them through that?
I think so, but I think it just means that our roles evolve, right? And Paul, you've probably been at the forefront of this. Is like at one point in your career, you're a doer. And then all of a sudden you go, oh, I can't do anymore because I've got to empower everyone else to be the doers. As much as like I'm very hands-on, I love doing, but I've struggled myself to pull myself out of that and go, I'm best to teach the team how to do things. And that's the best gift we can give. And sometimes you get that imposter syndrome, like, who am I to tell people how to do things? Like, as a teacher, of course, it's the number one concern that I have. But if we continue to go down that path and teach and give opportunity, then that's the best way for them to grow. But sometimes it's easier said than done to pull back and do it.
Yeah, I totally feel you on that imposter syndrome, right? I think as you step into leadership, the doing, you don't stop doing, but the doing changes and it's less tangible, right? Because there's not a result out there. In fact, the doing personally that I feel is giving the people in my business the platform to be exceptional at what they do, right? That support and that safety to just go forth and experiment, be curious and find their way in it, right? And there's no, the narrower we make a role, the less likely we are to find people to succeed in it. So, part of my job is opening people's minds up to what they can do and giving them the freedom and the flexibility to be successful in that. But that's 20 years of trying to figure out how to do that sort of stuff. There are lots of businesses out there now that are relatively new, particularly the pure plays, and trying to figure out how to run your business, how to figure out, the challenges that we've seen with supply chain issues and logistics and all that sort of stuff, and bringing human beings into your business as you've started to expand. It's kind of a crazy time, right? Like I really feel for leaders and business owners in that space as well. We do have one question that's come through from Rob Kane. Hey, Rob. Nathan, is your recruitment and development focused on merchants? And does it extend to technology and SIs as well? So how wide are you starting to see that shift go?
Good question, Rob. It's merchants only at the moment, but we are working on developing a service offering for technology and service implementers to the e-commerce industry. I mean, online retailers showed us how much that's needed just in the conversations we were having. So, we're here to service the e-commerce industry as a whole, and that was the intent from the start. But merchants quickly took over. And what we find is that we need to make sure that we have a service offering for e-commerce partners rather than merchants that is specific to them, because they are different environments and different types of people. We often, there is still that transition between people who love working in retail and then move into agencies or tech or whatever. That still happens, but there's a lot more work and a lot more transition you've got to put into that to make that happen well. It's not a natural progression.
Yeah, and it is interesting, right? Like I think the landscape now with the boom in online retail, and then the shift that we're seeing, some of the tech stocks dropping, and more tech people coming into the market as well. That cross pollination between tech, agency, and merchant is going to be more prevalent in the market. One of the things that Overdose has always looked at has been trying to bring people from merchant side into the business, because there's no one better who knows how a merchant's thinking and why they're shouting from the rooftops about this one thing and why it's so important than someone who's actually been there at the coalface trying to deal with that sort of stuff as well. So we've always tried to have that empathy, but that's a hard thing, right? In a small pool, as you said earlier, moving, you don't want to be the ones just moving talent from one place to the other, right? Because you're just chasing your tail the whole time. So I love that idea about training people into it. But, as we see it opening up and as borders start to open up as well, that shift from a pure focus on, I just need retail oriented people who've got 10 years experience and have done this and that and worked on that platform and all that sort of stuff, it needs to change, right?
Yeah. It's there's a couple of points there. Like, we're the same at eSuite, is that even though we're a recruitment business, that's one key part of our offering. We don't recruit recruiters. We recruit e-commerce people and then train them on recruitment so that they can sit down exactly like you would do at Overdose, Paul, and make sure they can have good e-commerce conversations straight up. Like, that's what our clients value. Like, yep, cool. You understand how retail works. You understand the pressures that we're under, all that sort of stuff. We can teach recruitment. Like, that's fine. Like, we can do that. But you can't teach empathy, like you said, and true understanding of what happens in a retail world.
Yeah, that emotional connection to that environment is just different, right? You can talk about it, but feeling it and breathing it and trading it and doing all those things, that just makes a business, a retail business tick, is kind of crazy. Joshua Smith's just jumped in. Recruiters are saying there's a shortage for e-com and digital specialists. However, many companies are advertising roles and offering junior salaries for big JDs. Are you seeing that in the market, or have we seen a shift away from that now, or where's this going to settle?
Yeah, it's a hard one. I feel like it's a good question, Josh, because we had a lot of, at the larger end of town, had a lot of recruitment managers internally and people who were just left with budgets to go, I know they're worth more than this, what I'm recruiting, but this is what I've got. I need to do something. So I feel like a lot of budgeting processes were left behind the growth that we had in e-commerce last year. It'll be interesting to see if that changes in the next 6 months. Also, I think we're starting to see a lot more open briefs. So we're seeing people come to us and go, these are the skill sets I need, but I can go over and under depending on the skill set. And one of the lead questions that we always ask is, what are your top 3 non-negotiables? Don't forget the JD, forget everything else. If we find people, what are the 3 things they must have? And then we dive into culture and what culture means to there, and try and find like-minded people with good energy that matches the energy of the founder. All that sort of stuff, because that's way more important. Like, we've had so many instances of people ticking all the boxes on large JDs and then getting into interviews and they go, can do the job, but they're not our type of people.
That's such an interesting point, though, right? Like, if you compare it, and something that I've been observing a lot more lately, is if you were hiring internally, you would hire for the capability to grow into the role.
Yeah.
But when you're recruiting externally, you have this JD, this checklist of skill set and capability and KPI, and what you're looking for is the person who most likely ticks all of those boxes. And then you, as you say, you go and interview them, and then you go, well, they fit, the right type of person for the business. Am I taking expertise, or am I taking cultural fit, that sort of stuff? Do you think that there needs to be a bit of a shift in that mindset of external recruiting, looking for candidates externally from the business, to go, what I need fit first? So does this person fit into the way that we operate? Do they have the passion, the energy? Do they have a baseline? Like you said, what are my top 3 non-negotiables? And can we use that job description mentality as more of a career planning tool? Right? This is the journey we'll take you on to get to this expertise that'll help grow into that, build your confidence, your expertise. You'll be able to tick more of those boxes, but we're the ones that are going to support you into that growth role as well.
Yeah, it's a funny one. I have mixed feelings about JDs. I really don't like them, if I'm honest, because I think they serve a purpose when you're recruiting, because it helps you clarify your thoughts around what's important. I think it's more important for the employer than the employee. Because it helps clarify the thoughts. What do I actually need this person to do? What's the nice things to have? So you get that clarity. But I don't know. I see it so often is that JDs are used for recruiting, and then they're put in a drawer, and people are like, good job done. It's like, comes to review time and go, oh shit, what was on that JD again? Like, what are all these things? Because once you're in, you just get wrapped up and you go, right? In retail, you just go and do what you need to do to make sure you hit your targets and your responsibilities, but the actual JD probably gets left behind. So, and it evolves. Like, we see it in our own organization. It's like, by the time you review it again in 12 months time, that person's evolved, the role's evolved, the business is evolved. It probably looks a lot different. So I think it's more important to have those open and honest conversations as you go and find those culture fits of people that can probably even stretch the JD into areas that you didn't even imagine that it could go. That's really important.
Yeah, I mean, it's that age-old statement, right? Like, hire people that are smarter than you and then just get out of their way, right? Like, I can't remember who said that, probably Steve Jobs or something like that. But it is interesting, right? Like, I actually firmly believe in the one-page job description, right? What are we trying to achieve? What are some of the core things that you kind of have, but just remove all of that shit around what's my experience, where have I been, what's my education, all that sort of stuff, right? No one, we're talking about an industry that in its most mature state is probably only 5 to 10 years old, right? There's no way you're going to get someone with 15 years experience doing, kick-ass e-com, right? So it's about finding someone who's hungry for it, who's probably got a bit more of real life experience in there, and that's where those grads coming in who've spent 3 years working through university to pay their way at a Rebel Sport or a BCF, right? Because those are the people that have been at the coalface, lived that stuff, and that translation from I can sell stuff to people walking into a store, I know what they're looking for, I know how that works, click and collect, all that sort of stuff, into now I can work for you to help guide your direction, from a digital standpoint as well.
And one of the things we see, right, we're not in medicine where you need a license before you can practice. So
we're not saving lives, right?
We're not saving lives. And we've got this thing, right, is like, even if you're not in a role that you love, you might be in, I don't know, in government, for example, but you love e-commerce. There's no reason you can't have an e-commerce project on the go. You can get in and you can learn. Like we were saying at the start, most people have learned what they know through Google search. That can still happen. Like those tangible skills, obviously, there's a lot more experience when you're dealing in the real life, but there's no excuse not to learn yourself. So, that's the thing. That's the initiative that you really want to look for, is to go, yeah, I'm waiting for someone to teach me this. Like, no one's going to teach you. Go out and learn it yourself. Put your hand up for a bit of volunteering. Put your hand up to do an internship. Start your own Shopify site, because anyone can do it in 2 hours. It's like, just get in and give it a go. And that's the kind of attitudes I love seeing.
Yeah, it's like if you wrote a job description that you really, with the skills that you really need, can use Google search to figure shit out. Some of those things as a prerequisite would be quite amazing. And you're right, there's no, the more that we look at what the future holds, there's no one answer. There's no one way. There's just so many different avenues and tracks and specializations and broad spectrum skill sets that you need in order to navigate that sort of stuff. I think that the most important characteristic of anyone stepping into a job, as a hiring person, is, can I sense that curiosity? Can I sense that desire to just want to learn more, to dive in and to own it, right? Because as soon as you have that restrictive mindset, I need to know how to send emails, I need to know how to build a product page, and that's all you'll ever do. But having curiosity, go, cool, I've nailed that. What can I learn next? What's next, right? And just building on those skills is crazy.
And if you look at some of the best people in our industry, and you would have had them on here talking to them, the founders that have started from nothing often come from other industries. So, last week I was speaking to the co-owners of a bikini brand, and they were ex-psychologists and commercial accountants. Went on holidays, had this idea, got onto Alibaba, started a Shopify website, no previous experience, and we're up and running. And now it's a $20 million bikini business.
Amazing. I listened to that podcast. I just thought that's about passion and curiosity, right?
Exactly.
That's about, I love this idea over here. I'm so good at what I do now, but my drive and my passion is, can I do this? And you can't teach that, right?
No.
You have to hire for it, and then you teach those basic skills. Exactly like what you said with eSuite, right? I want people with empathy and experience in that. I can teach them how to recruit.
Yeah. And we follow, it's an old model, but we follow the 70-20-10 rule when it comes to personal development. Only 10% of really what you learn is formal training, courses, certifications, all that sort of stuff. 70% of it is stretching yourself on the job. And I think the key to that is not waiting for someone else to stretch you. It's putting your hand up for new projects. It's putting yourself up to go, hey, I could deliver it to this level, but hey, what if I actually delivered it to this level and stretch the boundaries a little bit? Those moments and those opportunities are so key to your personal development, and you'll surprise yourself. And then that last 20% being the mentors, the people that you're around all the time, and drawing as much as you can out of those experiences, because we're in an industry that people generally want to help. You'd be surprised at what you can get out of a simple LinkedIn message saying, God, I love what you're doing. Like, can be founders, they're so good in Australia. It's like, love what you're doing. I'd love to know how you did this. you'll get a paragraph back telling them exactly how you did this. Like, I don't think you get that in many other markets, but in Australia, we've seemed to have this really open, honest, environment where people are so willing to share.
Yeah, it's funny you talk about that, because I think outside looking in, it looks hyper competitive, right? Whether you are a merchant or a high street retailer or a manufacturer or whatever, right? Hunting for that customer and getting that sale and creating that retention, that loyalty with that customer, it feels hyper competitive. But the reality is that, whether you're agency, whether you're retail, whether you're tech, everyone's going on the same journey, right? We're all trying to create something, build something that is, our business particularly is built on people. So we have to create an environment where people want to be, where they can thrive, where they can, when they can leave and on their really practical LinkedIn profile that just says what I've done, you put the Overdose badge on there, and then people go, oh, cool, you've had a good experience, right? You must be good people if you've kind of been there. That's secretly, it's not that secret anymore, obviously, but that's the thing that really that's the thing that gives me real pride, is if we can build that type of thing. Do you think, like, I'm interested in that model that you've got with the talent and the recruitment side of things, the training, the accelerator program, that consultancy piece? Are you finding you're having more conversations with the businesses and the people that you interact with around that? How do you create environments for human beings to be successful?
Yeah, and we're doing it very informally at the moment. We down the track, we'll look to go into areas like employer branding and team structure as a service. But right now, we're just working with our clients and having honest conversations with them to go, all right, tell us what your plans are for the next 12 months. Here's where we're going the team. All right, this is how we're seeing it structured in other places. Here are some options. Here are some salary ranges that we think you should be budgeting for. So it's really informal at the moment, but we do want to turn that around. I think I loved your point before around that Overdose badge. That means something to people in the industry, right? People go, okay, if they're from Overdose, then we know that they've had this experience and they're at this level. And I think the employer branding is something that we see often overlooked, because even 3-4 years ago, being a big retailer was enough. Publicly listed, doing huge dollars. People are like, I want to work there, right? But the world's changed so much now, is that purpose, mission is probably more important than being big. And so it's so important that candidates, potential team members, understand what you stand for, not just how big you are. And I think that's something people still struggle to get around.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it was for so long easy, right? If you were a big box retailer, people just knew you as that, that store or that online store, and big brands, people wanted to work for them because you knew you had an experience. You could go different places. You could move sideways, up, left, right, down, whatever. But there was less impact because you didn't have to work for it. But now, because there's such a talent shortage, I think those businesses that take a step back and go, what can we do to provide an environment where people want to stay? Because it feels so much that there's movement in the market. Half of what we have to do is just go, I want to create a place where people really struggle to leave because they just feel like there's so much there for them. Are you seeing, those conversations starting to, because when you're trying to sell a role to a human being, right, part of it isn't just the brand, is the salary, these are responsibilities. These are the people you get to work with.
Yeah.
This is what we're seeing that's happening internally. They do really cool stuff for their staff. They focus on time together and training and learning from each other. I get lots of great word of mouth from the people who work there to say it's fantastic to work here, right? That's an employer brand.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the first things that we do, and it's a bit of our secret sauce, I'm not going to go into it too much, but I don't often hold back, and I feel a bit dirty holding back on it. But it's one thing that we love doing is that rather when we're talking to people about a new role, we'll connect them into the team first rather than connect them into a JD or a job description. Mm-hmm. First and foremost, we want them to understand the people that they'll be working with and the environment and the culture they'll be working with. And then we can fill in the gaps on the JD because that's always negotiable. And then we kind of want from our candidates a hell yeah or a hell no. And if we can get that straight up front, we're in a good spot for everyone, right? Everyone's in a good spot rather than going, oh yeah, it looks okay. I think, yeah, no, I'll put my hat in the ring for that. And that can end up being a 3-week process where it's still, lukewarm the whole way. And I think that's a really bad outcome for everyone. We really want to get that, understand what you're getting into and have that kind of energy connection, I suppose, first and foremost.
I love that concept, right? That concept of hell yeah or hell no.
Yeah.
That middle ground is that awkward place where you feel like you have to work hard to convince someone that it's a good thing for them. And how long is that going to go on for, right? So as an employer of people, that's what we look for is people who come in and go, I'm slightly scared, but I'm pretty excited about jumping into this, right? And when you have that really that kind of nervous energy and that excitement, and you're going to hit on something great, right? And then all you've got to do, it's like bottling lightning, right? You've just got to grab hold of it and hold on to it enough and give it the encouragement and the oxygen that it needs to breathe and kind of go forward. But sitting on that side, that in between point, going, is this person really into this job, into this role? Do they really? And does this, is this employer really going to be pumped to have this person in there? It must be a really challenging situation when you.
I love that idea of nervous energy. That's so good. I love that you put it that way, because I think there's in a good match, there's nervous energy on both sides. It's like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know what this could turn into, but I'm excited, but I don't know exactly. And I think that's fun rather than going, yep, I know this person will tick this, tick this, tick this.
Yeah, it does. I mean, often in those situations, it feels like more of a sideways move, right? Once they feel like they can tick all the boxes, like what's more? What's left to give, right? If I can go on and do this with my eyes closed, have you run out of passion, or it's a never-ending thing if you allow it to be. So let's try and find ways. And that's the thing. Like I had lots of nervous energy starting this conversation, because I kind of look at what you've done, Nathan, and I look at the profile you've built in the industry based on just really genuinely wanting to make the industry better by finding better people. And I was pretty nervous to talk to you about what motivates that, right? Because I look at what we do and go, man, we could do so much more. And then you have someone like you who's going, well, I do this podcast because I believe in raising the voice of the Australian e-com industry. I do this digital social meetup because, everyone needs to see people and talk and connect, and they need to do it in a safe environment and stuff. Do you want to talk a little bit about the digital social side of things? Because that must have been a challenge, during COVID. And now I know you've come back and you've had a couple of them as well. What are you seeing that's coming out of that gathering series?
Yeah, it's interesting. And just on your last point, Paul, I don't see it. I see my life through a different lens. Like I just feel lucky to be able to talk to you, talk to all I'm constantly amazed that people want to come on Add to Cart and talk to me for an hour. So it's and eSuite's a business too. So it's not a charity. It's we're doing it because we're growing something as well. So as long as everyone wins, I'm happy. But from a digital social perspective, that's been an interesting experiment, because it started out as me just wanting to catch up with mates in the industry. And that was, 6-8 years ago. And it was literally catching up for a beer at the local brewery. And I was like, why don't we just put it on LinkedIn and see who else in Brisbane wants to come along that's in our industry? We ended up getting 60 people come along. And me being the great event organizer that I am, I didn't book any spaces, didn't warn the brewery, didn't do anything, but it was a great night. And so that's just evolved over time as something that we can host. And it's just Brisbane at the moment. But we're getting 200, 250 people there 3 times a year.
Wow.
Get some great speakers. It's free to come. You just buy your own drinks, stay as long as you want. Really just, relaxed environment. So that's been great. We'll probably see it evolve. And I was literally only having this conversation yesterday, so it's a bit fresh. But we'll see it evolve next year. We'll have our last one in late November, early December. In Brisbane, but then we're looking to be able to take that format, change it slightly, but roll it out nationally next year, because I think those kind of relaxed conversations, like we saw at Online Retailer last week, people are dying out for it.
Yeah, it's interesting. If you talk about online retailer a little bit, I know when we were starting our business and we were looking at crossing the ditch and trying to take on Australia, and every conversation we'd had was like, don't, it's not worth it. It's really flooded landscape. There's no space for you, all that sort of stuff. And we went to online retailer and realized that there's this just amazing network of people who just want to talk really honestly and safely about what's next and challenges and opportunities and all that sort of stuff. And that gave us a lot of hope for it. I think the industry is crying out for unstructured conversation, right? Safe, unstructured, no sell, just a safe place where you can go and like ask stupid questions, right? Or, kind of share some of the struggles, maybe not all the struggles, but hey, how have you dealt with landing that stuff in the port? I've still got stuff that's stuck on a boat halfway around the world, and all that sort of stuff where common problems become and shared problems become easier to solve type thing. I love the idea that you're going to take it nationally. I mean, not only is that brave, because who would organize events in this world, but the concept is so powerful. And so looking at online retailer and going back, some of the things that I heard coming out of it was that it was far less about, for people on the ground doing booths in the expo center, it was far less about leads. It was far, far more about reconnection.
Yeah.
Right.
I've never seen an expo floor buzzing like it was last week. Normally, expos are normally the thing everyone has to walk through to get to the food or to the keynote presentations. Everyone kind of puts their head down and just tries to get in there without catching the eyes of someone in a booth. But I felt like this one, everyone had their heads up looking for people to connect with, and it was really great energy. And just on your earlier point, I'm a massive advocate of open ecosystems. So for me, I hate the idea of closed retailer events, whether that be little tiny dinners where you have a retail speaker sponsored, and it's like this little closed thing that only certain people can get into. I'm like, even though retailers want to speak to retailers, we can all learn. We're all in e-commerce. We're all in retail together, whether you're in tech, whether you're a service provider, whether you're a retailer, we can all learn off each other. So I think just smashing those walls down is so important. And we saw that on the floor at Online Retailer. Is like we saw partnerships being made by service providers and tech partners going, oh, you're working with this client. We're working there as well. Like, let's work together. There's more than enough here for us to do that. And works for the retailers in the end, right? If all your partners are working together.
Yeah, if you start creating joined up networks, right, only good can come out of that. It's interesting. We have this concept within our business, and I think it's a really interesting way of thinking, and it's helped us a lot. You can buy a recipe book by Gordon Ramsay, right? It doesn't mean you're going to be able to cook like Gordon Ramsay. What it does mean is you can take the ingredients and the instructions and you can turn it into your own thing. And so that fear of kind of holding back and going, this is my secret, this is the way I do things, we're not ever going to tell anyone, what has made us who we are today. We go the opposite direction. We're happy to share with anyone who asks, because what we know is that it will only help them look at their business and maybe make some changes or evolve it in a way or add things to it that can only make the industry healthier. And I think particularly when it comes to retail and merchants and, not necessarily retail, B2B as well, a shared environment where people can go, hey, these are some big challenges that we're seeing in the industry. There isn't that conversation that's happening out there. There's lots of kind of future, here's some cool shit, there's some doom and gloom sales out there, but no one's actually going, hey, here's a path that we can see. Here's a way to navigate what's coming, and at least even if we don't know what the answers are, we know that there's a resilience that we can build together in it. And that's what I think the next 6 months is about, right? It's about a shared resilience to work through it and find, this commonality of shared success through it as well, right? Because everyone's in the same boat. Yeah. Right? We're all facing this global environment where there's uncertainty and chaos and madness and, random people getting into power and, all that kind of, all that stuff that, makes you think it's a little bit nuts out there.
It's funny. You just reminded me of a little note that I made during Online Retailer. And this is no by means the solution. It's probably more of a stunt than anything else. But I'd love to, like, those events, if you had like a, instead of a big keynote, a little like 30-person section, and call it like the honesty box or something like that, where you have a speaker and everyone leaves their phone at the door and everyone goes in, and it's literally just tell us how it is. I just like, it is a stunt, right? But I think I share that with you, is that the more open we can be in learning from each other, like even at the digital social, we have other recruitment companies come to the digital social, and that's totally fine. That's great. Like, because we're confident in what we do and our differentiator. We're not trying to win someone else's business. We're just running our own race. And I know you guys are exactly the same. It's like, if you're confident in what you're doing and what you're offering, and you're doing it to a really high level, you don't have to worry about everyone else. In fact, you'll help, everyone will come up together.
Yeah, I 100% agree on that. I think if you're more worried about your competition and then finding out about you, you focus far less on your own internal improvement as well. And if you take it back to humans, one of the things that we do a lot is we talk to individuals in the business, no matter where they are and what they do and what their role is and how long they've been in the company, and Lord forbid how old they are. We talk openly about what the opportunities are, what the struggles are, what the next kind of craziness that we're going to face, and how adaptable we can be for that. And I agree with you 100%. If we have a shared focus on, we're about to see a different environment, the talent shortage is going to change potentially, or it's going to stabilize, but we're going to see a bit of a movement away from, pure digital into mixed again, and stores will open up, and, all these things that we've fought for 2 years to try and, fix is now going to come back and face us. If we do this together, the industry as a whole will be far, far stronger, right? And if you look at, Australia and New Zealand in particular are made up of a very similar mix of businesses. That small medium market is such a foundation of the success and the growth of the company, of the countries. We have to be responsible for helping those businesses grow and accelerate, right? Do you think, as part of that open networks, have you seen a change in behavior over the 6 years that you've been doing it in terms of openness?
Oh, look, I think e-commerce, as much as we are open, there's definitely a bit more of a competitiveness in there, in that it's not so much an add-on to retail as it is, a really important part. And there's, good money to be made. We've seen some pretty great unicorns come out of Australia in e-commerce. So I think it's a little bit more competitive, and there's definitely some businesses that have gone into their shell and retracted. And there's some businesses you will never see one of their team members at any events, regardless, right? And I'm not going to name names, but you'll start seeing them struggle for talent because, to your point before, if everyone's bought into your mission, they'll be your best recruiters. They'll share, hey, what's life at Overdose like? And they'll have those conversations. All of a sudden, everyone's like, oh, that sounds like a pretty good place to work. So if, we're starting to see those teams come out of the woodwork because they have to start sharing their story and telling what's going on, because it's so important. But no, look, I think it's exactly the same as in terms of the community. I think it's just curiosity is a key thing. Connection's really important, and you see the cream rise to the top, people who are willing to share, give. We had some great examples in the awards of people like Julie Mathers and Paul Waddy, who have continually just given back, regardless of whether they're running a business, whether they're waiting for the next business, whatever they're doing. They're like, their philosophy doesn't change. We just keep giving. And I think that's important.
I think that's something that the Australian industry does phenomenally well, right? It wraps itself around and celebrates the success and the people that make it successful, right? You look at the top 50 in e-commerce. I know you've been on that list like forever, and you look at the events and the awards and all that sort of stuff. I think the more that we look at our business globally and go, look at the markets that we're in and industries that we're tackling, there isn't one that really matches the maturity of celebration of its people that Australia does. So that gives me, it gives me so much pride to be able to actually start to participate in that. That's really exciting, particularly as a Kiwi coming over the ditch, right? But it also gives me great hope, right? That there is so much resilience and so much talent and so much hunger to be together and supportive and a community that you can't help but overcome, right? It's that old tribal mentality. The stronger the tribe is, the more that you can face up against the stuff that's coming towards you as well. So that's a huge thing.
Like, you're a contributor to it as well. You can't just be a passenger to it. So these sessions that you've done, what are we up 92 now? And you've put a lot of your clients and a lot of your partners out into the world. You could have easily done these as closed sessions, only open to your paying clients and people in your ecosystem. Instead, you've gone, actually, no, we'll just stream this to every channel, and we'll bring our connections and make them available to everyone else. It's so important. And I know it's a marketing exercise, but it's also a giving exercise. So,
well, it's that same recipe concept, right? There's no point in hiding everything behind a gate, right? You look at paywalls for news articles. No one wants to talk to a paper that doesn't have a readership, right? Or only has a closed readership, which narrows down the field of view and limits the exposure, and kind of you start talking to the same people repeatedly, right? And I think that's a global problem, is that the world has become so polarized that the more that you close it down, the more extreme the views get. So our job, and I know that's what you're doing with Add to Cart and the digital social as well, is to democratize it, right? To give it back, to give people more time to do that. We are getting the big wrap up from behind the scenes, and I'm pretty sure we could have this conversation for another hour easily. But look, if anyone has any further questions, feel free to drop them in the comment section, and we will answer them offline. But Nathan, mate, it's been just such a privilege to have a conversation with you like this. I don't think we got too raw, right? It wasn't that bad and unfiltered. So hopefully
we're pretty well behaved.
Yeah.
Paul, thank you so much. It's great to speak with you, and love what you guys are doing.
Wicked. Hey, and look, best of luck with everything you're doing. I think it's outstanding.
Thank you. Likewise.
Cheers.